This is Nick Williams with Temple of Geek, and today we are reviewing the season finale of The Acolyte. This will contain major spoilers, so make sure you have seen the episode before you continue. We start the scene the same place we left off in episode 6, with Osha with the mask on breathing. As the stranger approaches Osha, Osha starts to basically kind of convulse. Once the helmet is removed, Osha says that she saw visions of May, and that May killed Sol without a weapon. And so the stranger thinks that May completes her mission. Then we jump to May and Sol on the ship. Sol has just confessed everything that happened on Brendok. In fact, their ship was actually floating above Brendok at this time. While they're talking, May ends up using Pip to break out of her constraints. She's able to use Pip to electrocute Sol and get away. So May is flying away in an extra spacecraft and Sol is chasing her. There's a whole chase scene and Sol is actually getting a target lock on May's ship. But that's when the tracker Basil ends up sabotaging Sol's ship so that he can't fire. But through this whole chase scene, May's ship ends up crashing on the planet. Meanwhile, back on Coruscant at the Jedi Temple, Vernestra ends up being confronted by Senator Rayencourt. He's accusing her of hiding things from the Senate. And he really has it out for the Jedi. He wants to give them a full review. He thinks the entire Jedi Order is just one big cult. Meanwhile, back on the island, Osha and the stranger make an agreement to go find May. As they're leaving in a ship, a dark, mysterious figure ends up looking out through the cave. Now, this mysterious figure, hooded, is a species called Mune. Now, if you know Star Wars lore, this is potentially Darth Plagueis. Darth Plagueis is Darth Sidious's master. Darth Sidious is also Palpatine. So based on the old Legends lore, this is most likely Darth Plagueis. And yes, this is a huge reveal for Star Wars. We find Sol, who just landed on Brendok, and he turned on the beacon to signal the Jedi. And of course, Vernestra gets that signal, gathers a team of Jedi together to go to Brendok. As Sol arrives at the temple, he sees the ship with Osha and the stranger arrive. So everyone's starting to come together. As Osha and the stranger get to the gate of the fortress, the stranger disappears. But we see the stranger again inside the fortress as he confronts Sol, and there's a huge lightsaber battle between the two. As those two are battling it out, Osha eventually finds May in their old bedroom. May ends up telling her the truth that Sol killed their mother. But Osha is not yet ready to believe it, and they end up fighting between each other. And that's when the final ship with Vernestra and the Jedi arrive. And with that distraction, May escapes. The stranger and Sol are still battling it out. However, Sol has the upper hand this time. He's able to damage the stranger's lightsaber so it won't function. The stranger stands defenseless, but that's when May attacks Sol and takes his lightsaber. But instead of using it, she throws it away. The stranger tries to convince May to finish her journey of killing a Jedi without a weapon. But instead, May wants justice. May wants the truth revealed to the Jedi and to the Senate. That's when Sol tells May the full truth, that the twins are not actually twins, that they are actually one person divided into two, that somehow the witches were able to create them using the virgins. May also gets Sol to reveal that he did kill their mother, and of course, Osha hears this. Not only does Osha hear it, but she's holding Sol's lightsaber. As Sol is trying to plead with her, Osha actually force chokes Sol. As she's force choking him, the crystal in the saber that she's holding is starting to turn red. And that's because she is channeling all her anger, fear, and hate through that kyber crystal. That is actually how darkside users turn kyber crystals to red. And unfortunately, Sol does not survive this and falls over dead. The stranger tries to go over and somewhat comfort her, but that's when she ignites the lightsaber at him. As she's igniting the lightsaber, the blade starts to turn all the way red. As Vernestra and the Jedi are arriving, Vernestra senses the stranger. And she knows who he is, and he had his helmet off at the time. As soon as he senses her, he puts the helmet back on. May convinces Osha to leave with her. They actually have to climb down the same way that May fell when she was a child. As the Jedi enter the temple, they see Sol's body, and Vernestra is able to sense what happened in the past. It's actually a skill that some Jedi have when they're in that area. May and Osha end up going back to that tree that they were at when they were kids, and of course the stranger arrives. May asks Osha what she wants, and Osha decides to train with the stranger. And in order to tie up all the loose ends, they decide to wipe May's memory. And that's when the Jedi arrive and arrest May. She's brought back to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, where Vernestra has a conversation with her. As Vernestra starts to reveal the truth to May, who now has a memory wipe, we see at the same time Vernestra addressing a council of senators. And in that address, she blames everything on Sol. So she ends up telling a big lie in order to protect the Jedi Order. She says that Sol is the one who murdered everybody and then ended his own life. But Vernestra still tells May the truth and reveals that she needs May's help to find Vernestra's old pupil, who of course we now know is the Stranger. Osha and the Stranger arrive back onto the island, and we see them looking off in the distance, holding a lightsaber together. They're going to train. The final shot of this season is Vernestra entering a door, and as we see the camera start to pan down, she says, "We need to talk." And of course, we see the head of Master Yoda. As you can see with this season finale, it's a lot of information, and here are my thoughts. This episode was definitely good. I do not think they knocked it out of the park, but I do think it was a solid episode. We had a lot of loose ends that were tied up, which is great, but we also still have a lot of mystery up in the air. We now have the Stranger and Osha who are going to be training with each other, and of course, what's happening with Darth Plagueis? Is he just waiting in the wings to see what happens? Because what we do know of Darth Plagueis is, first of all, in the old book that isn't canon anymore, he is mining Cortosis, which is actually where that cave is. And we also know, both from the Revenge of the Sith and the old book, that Plagueis is trying to harness the power to create life. Not only that, but to stop those he cares about from dying. And of course, we now know the Stranger is Vernestra's old pupil. So there's a lot of things still up in the air for a season 2, if we do get a season 2. And I hope so, because now I'm very invested to find out this information. I need to know more. The way they took this story was somewhat predictable with some of the characters, but I did enjoy their path. As sad as it is, a character like Sol, seeing his downfall, seeing the regrets, the choices that he makes, seemingly for good reasons, but ends up being the wrong choices. A tragic character like that very much symbolizes what starts to happen with the Jedi Order. And part of the show's mission statement is to show how the Jedi went from the High Republic to what we see in the prequels. And we very much see that both from Sol and Vernestra. What didn't quite hit for me in this episode were the emotional stakes, specifically with May and Osha. We learned a while back that May's real allegiance is to her sister and not to some Dark Lord. And we do know Osha is holding in a lot of anger. But the way that's been presented this season, I haven't been fully invested in those two characters on their journey. So in the great emotional moments of this episode, I thought were good, but I wasn't as fully invested as I could have been. I thought Sol did a great job. I thought he definitely presented that character the way it needed to be presented, because of course, a lot of characters in this season do not survive. So you need to be invested enough, but not too invested where it will take you out of the show. I was hoping to get a little bit more focus on the Stranger and learning more about the Stranger, and we ended up having him as a little bit more of a side character in this. Even though we got a lot of great action, it wasn't really focused on him. We got some reveals with Vernestra, but that's about it. Obviously, we're saving some of that for a season 2. There's some really cool lore moments in this. One of them being the kyber crystal changing color, actually being able to see that kyber crystal being bled and to see that that was happening when she ignited the lightsaber and we see it start to go fully red. That was cool. Plagueis. Obviously, Plagueis is going to be what everyone's talking about with this episode. That is all you're going to see and hear online, and I hope it doesn't get spoiled for you. One of the main characters that I just am not sure about in this season is Vernestra, because we know Vernestra from the High Republic books, but that's when Vernestra is very young. And how does Vernestra get to where she is now? Because that doesn't really seem to line up for me. So I'm hoping we maybe get something into season 2 with Vernestra's past where that will make a little bit more sense. Because in the High Republic books, she has a better sense of right and wrong, but of course, she is very young, so things could have happened. I can't forget to mention Master Yoda's head being revealed. We finally see Master Yoda sort of from the back. It was cool to see that, and I hope we actually do get Yoda in a second season because that's what people have been talking about. Where's Yoda? Where's Master Yoda? Yoda's around. But it is a very slight tease, so there's not a whole lot I can say about it. We still don't know much about the Virgins, and I think that might be explored if there is a season 2, because if we have a character like Plagueis come into this, he's going to try to want to harness that kind of power. Now, if you're wondering and you see and hear things on the internet, no lore has been broken, nothing is broken canon. That is kind of all the rage that you see on YouTube and things like that, but everything is still on track with what George Lucas laid down many years ago. And the cool thing about this episode is we're actually getting a look into some of those aspects or things that we haven't seen before, which is a very Star Wars thing to do. We want to see new things in Star Wars. I'm actually hoping into season 2 that I will be able to be more invested on May and Osha and their stories now that we've had this development. Again, overall, I thought this show was good. The first half of the season, I was very hit and miss about. It didn't really hook me, and the second half got me very intrigued. So it is not one of the great Disney Plus shows, in my opinion, but I think it did deliver by the end. I think all of this is going to be better on a rewatch. I think I'm going to have a much better time on this finale when I rewatch it. And part of that is because of the flow of the actual season itself. When you go back and watch the episodes, you will have all that information now, so your brain will be able to kind of fill in those gaps. So the show could have done better with a little bit of restructuring, or maybe just smashing some episodes together so it wasn't divided to 8. But now that I'll be able to go back and binge it, I think I will have a good ride. Thank you for listening to this review. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It has been a pleasure, and may the Force be with you.